The first sign that humanity wasn't alone came not with ships or signals, but with silence. Every genetic database on Earth went dark simultaneously. From the vast seed vaults of Norway to the DNA repositories in Beijing, digital walls slant down around humanity's carefully cataloged biological heritage. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the center of the National Genetics Archive in Washington, D.C., watching as her life's work vanished screen by screen. The overhead lights flickered, then stabilized into an unsettling purple hue. The air itself seemed to crystallize, and in the center of the main atrium, reality folded inward. The holographic projection that formed was unlike anything human technology could produce, a being that seemed to be composed of living crystal and flowing data streams. "I speak for the galactic hegemony," it announced in perfect English, its voice resonating with harmonics that made Sarah's teeth ache. "Your world has been identified as a Class 5 genetic repository, one of only 7 known to exist in this galactic arm." Sarah wasn't supposed to be the one handling first contact. But as the lead curator of Earth's largest genetic database, she found herself stepping forward. "I'm Dr. Sarah Chen. What exactly does that classification mean?" The crystalline entity's form shifted, displaying complex patterns that might have been amusement or disdain. "It means your planet's biological diversity represents a resource of incalculable value. The hegemony requires a tribute of 30% of all unique genetic sequences present in your biosphere. You have 60 solar rotations to comply." The demand hit Sarah like a physical blow. 30% of Earth's genetic diversity. The implications were staggering. "That would devastate our ecosystems," she protested. "The interconnections between species are irrelevant to the hegemony's needs." The entity cut her off. "We have calculated that your biosphere can survive with 70% of its current diversity. Barely, but it will survive. The alternative is total genetic harvesting, which would leave this world sterile." Within hours, similar pronouncements were being made at biological research centers worldwide. The UN Security Council convened an emergency session, but the choices seemed impossible. Give up nearly a third of Earth's species, or lose everything. Dr. Marcus Rivera, Sarah's colleague, and the world's leading expert on genetic interactions, was the first to spot the pattern. "Look at how they're categorizing our genetic data," he said, pointing to the classification protocols the hegemony had transmitted. "They're treating genes like isolated components, like parts in a machine. They don't understand." Sarah leaned in, her eyes widening as she grasped what Marcus was showing her. The hegemony's genetic science was incredibly advanced, but it was also oddly linear. They saw genes as discrete units to be cataloged and stored, missing the intricate dance of coevolution that made Earth's biosphere unique. In the days that followed, a plan began to take shape. If the hegemony didn't understand the true nature of Earth's genetic heritage, perhaps that was humanity's advantage. Sarah found herself at the center of a hastily assembled international team, working around the clock to document something the aliens had overlooked: the living network of genetic information that spanned every ecosystem on Earth. "They want our genetic diversity," Sarah said during one late-night session, staring at the complex web of interactions displayed on her holographic workspace. "Let's show them what that really means." The team's first breakthrough came from Dr. Yuki Tanaka in Tokyo. She discovered that Earth's genetic systems operated on principles the hegemony's science didn't account for. Our DNA wasn't just a storage system, it was a living language, constantly evolving and adapting in ways their rigid classification systems couldn't comprehend. As the deadline approached, humanity prepared not just a response to the hegemony's demand, but a demonstration. They would show these advanced aliens that Earth's genetic heritage wasn't a resource to be harvested, but a complex system that had taken billions of years to develop. A system that might hold secrets even the hegemony hadn't discovered. The question was whether the aliens would understand what they were being shown before they decided to take everything by force. Sarah knew they were taking an enormous gamble, but as she looked at the intricate patterns of life displayed in her lab, she felt a fierce pride. Earth's greatest strength wasn't in any single species or gene, but in the incredible web of relationships that bound all life together. As the first month drew to a close, Sarah and her team prepared to show the hegemony exactly what they'd be destroying if they treated Earth's genetic heritage as mere resources to be cataloged and extracted. The future of every living thing on Earth would depend on making these advanced aliens understand something they'd apparently forgotten. That life wasn't just a collection of parts, but a symphony of interconnected stories written in the language of DNA. 2 weeks after the hegemony's ultimatum, Dr. Sarah Chen found herself standing in the heart of the Amazon rainforest. The morning air was thick with moisture and the calls of countless species. Each sound represented a thread in the vast tapestry of life they were fighting to preserve. The hegemony's ships have entered the solar system, Marcus reported through their secure quantum link. Their preliminary scans have already begun. But you need to see what we've discovered. Back at the hastily established Global Genetics Defense Center in Geneva, Sarah stared at the results of their latest analysis. The team had been working around the clock, studying how Earth's genetic systems responded to the hegemony scanning technology. What they found defied conventional understanding. The DNA isn't just storing information, Dr. Aisha Patel, their lead bioinformatician, explained. It's reacting to their scans. Look at these response patterns. She gestured to a cascade of data flowing across their holographic displays. Earth's biosphere is acting like a single, interconnected network. The implications were staggering. While individual species maintained their distinct genetic codes, there was a deeper layer of communication happening at the molecular level. Billions of years of coevolution had created something unprecedented. A planetary genetic network that adapted and responded as one. The hegemony's presence had triggered changes in this network, subtle at first, but growing stronger each day. Plant species were showing accelerated mutation rates. Microorganisms were developing new chemical pathways. Even the human genome showed signs of unprecedented activity. They think they're just cataloging static genetic information, Sarah realized. But they're actually interacting with a living system, one that's starting to react to their presence. The discovery sparked a new direction for their research. If Earth's genetic network was actively responding to alien contact, perhaps they could guide that response. Dr. Yuki Tanaka's team in Tokyo had already identified several key nodes in the network, species that seemed to act as communication hubs for this planetary genetic conversation. The hegemony's genetic science is incredibly advanced, Marcus observed, but it's also fundamentally limited. They treat genes like software to be copied and stored. They've forgotten that DNA isn't just code. It's a language that life uses to talk to itself. Sarah's team worked feverishly to understand this language. They discovered that Earth's genetic network operated on principles that defied the hegemony's rigid classification systems. It wasn't just about individual genes or species, it was about the relationships between them, the endless dance of adaptation and counter-adaptation that had shaped life on Earth. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Carlos Rodriguez, studying bacterial communities in deep-sea hydrothermal vents, noticed something extraordinary. The bacteria weren't just adapting to the hegemony scans, they were learning from them. Somehow, Earth's smallest organisms were decoding the alien technology's underlying principles and incorporating that information into their own genetic structures. It's not just resistance, Sarah explained to the Emergency Council of World Leaders. Earth's biosphere is trying to communicate with them, but the hegemony systems are too rigid to recognize the response. They're looking for genetic sequences they can catalog, while missing the living conversation happening right in front of them. As the deadline approached, humanity raced to understand this planetary dialogue. If they could prove that Earth's genetic heritage was more than just a collection of useful sequences, that it was a living library of solutions to problems the hegemony hadn't even imagined, perhaps they could turn the tables on their would-be harvesters. The risk was enormous. If they failed to make the hegemony understand, Earth could lose not just 30% of its genetic diversity, but the very network that made their biosphere unique in the galaxy. Yet with each passing day, the evidence grew stronger. Earth's genetic heritage wasn't just valuable because of what it was, but because of what it could become. In her quiet moments, Sarah found herself thinking about the parallel between humanity's situation and the very principles they were discovering. Just as Earth's species had survived countless challenges through cooperation and adaptation, perhaps humanity's best defense wasn't in resisting the hegemony's power, but in showing them a completely new way of understanding life itself. The question was whether they could gather enough evidence to prove their theory before the hegemony's patience ran out. The alien ships loomed in orbit, their presence a constant reminder that humanity wasn't just fighting for their genetic heritage. They were fighting to preserve a way of life that might prove vital to the entire galaxy's future. The underground facility beneath the Swiss Alps hummed with activity as Project Legacy entered its final phase. Dr. Sarah Chen watched as thousands of biological samples were processed through the new quantum genetic interfaces her team had developed. Each sample told part of a story, not just of what Earth's life was, but of what it could become. The hegemony's ships are beginning their final approach, Marcus announced, his holographic projection flickering with interference from the alien vessel's powerful scanning systems. They're demanding immediate access to our genetic repositories. Sarah nodded, her expression determined. Then it's time to show them exactly what they're dealing with. Begin the demonstration sequence. Around the world, specialized facilities activated synchronized genetic catalysts. These carefully engineered compounds weren't weapons. They were keys, designed to unlock the hidden potential of Earth's genetic network. In the Amazon, plants began producing entirely new chemical compounds. In the Pacific Ocean, bacterial communities started emitting complex bioluminescent signals. Even in the frozen Antarctic, dormant microorganisms awakened, displaying previously unknown survival mechanisms. Dr. Aisha Patel monitored the cascade of changes from her station. The network is responding exactly as we predicted. Earth's biosphere isn't just adapting to their presence anymore. It's reaching out to them. The hegemony's response was immediate. Their crystalline representatives materialized simultaneously in research centers worldwide, their usual cold efficiency disrupted by what appeared to be confusion. "You are interfering with the cataloging process," the main representative announced in Geneva. "These genetic mutations are not part of the approved extraction protocol." Sarah stepped forward, her heart pounding, but her voice steady. "No, we're showing you what you've overlooked. Earth's genetic heritage isn't a static resource to be harvested. It's a living library that's still writing new chapters." Through carefully calibrated demonstrations, Sarah's team showed the hegemony something unprecedented. Earth's genetic network wasn't just a collection of useful sequences. It was a vast, distributed intelligence capable of solving complex biological problems in real time. "Your own scans triggered this response," Dr. Yuki Tanaka explained, presenting data from her Tokyo lab. "Earth's biosphere recognized your technology as a new environmental factor and began adapting to it. Not just individual species, but the entire network working in concert." The evidence was undeniable. In the weeks since the hegemony's arrival, Earth's genetic network had begun developing entirely new biological technologies. Photosynthetic organisms were achieving efficiencies that defied conventional physics. Microscopic life forms were demonstrating quantum effects that shouldn't have been possible in biological systems. "This is why you can't take 30% of our genetic diversity," Sarah explained to the increasingly agitated hegemony representatives. "Every species is part of this planetary conversation. Remove too many voices, and the entire symphony falls apart." But Project Legacy wasn't just about preservation, it was about revelation. As the demonstrations continued, humanity showed the hegemony something their rigid technological civilization had forgotten. The true power of biological systems wasn't in their individual components, but in their ability to adapt, communicate, and evolve. Dr. Carlos Rodriguez's deep-sea bacteria had provided the key insight. These ancient organisms weren't just surviving in extreme conditions, They were actively engineering their environment, creating complex chemical networks that extended far beyond their individual cells. Your civilization has achieved incredible things through technology, Sarah addressed the Hegemony's Council. But Earth's biosphere shows us a different path, one where intelligence emerges not from controlling nature, but from participating in its endless dance of creation. The risk they were taking was enormous. If the Hegemony couldn't understand or refuse to accept what they were being shown, they might decide to take everything by force. But with each passing hour, more evidence accumulated. The genetic network's response to the Hegemony's presence was growing stronger, more coordinated, more purposeful. In orbital laboratories, alien scientists began detecting patterns they couldn't explain. Their scanning technologies were picking up quantum signatures that shouldn't have existed in organic systems. The very genetic sequences they had come to harvest were transforming before their eyes, demonstrating capabilities that challenged their understanding of life itself. As Project Legacy entered its final stages, Sarah and her team prepared to reveal their most startling discovery, one that would force the Hegemony to reconsider not just their demands, but their entire understanding of biological evolution. The question wasn't whether Earth's genetic heritage was valuable enough to preserve. The question was whether the Hegemony could afford to ignore what it was trying to tell them. The first sign that something had changed came when the Hegemony's ships began powering down their scanning arrays. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the control center of Project Legacy, watching as the massive vessels shifted into a defensive formation. But they weren't preparing to attack. They were protecting Earth from something. "We're detecting new signals," Marcus reported, his hands flying over the quantum interface. "They're not coming from the Hegemony ships. They're coming from deep space." The holographic displays filled with data as new vessels emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. These ships were different, organic curves instead of crystalline angles, pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that eerily mirrored the signals now being emitted by Earth's awakened genetic network. The Hegemony's representative materialized in the control center, its crystalline form showing signs of agitation. "You don't understand what you've done. The network wasn't supposed to activate this quickly. We were trying to prevent this." "Prevent what?" Sarah demanded. "What aren't you telling us?" The truth, when it came, shattered everything they thought they knew. The Hegemony wasn't trying to steal Earth's genetic heritage. They were trying to quarantine it. The new arrivals were the Synthesis, a coalition of organic civilizations that had embraced the kind of genetic networking Earth was just beginning to discover. "Your world is at a tipping point," the Hegemony representative explained. "When biological systems achieve planetary-scale genetic coordination, they either transcend into something greater or collapse into chaos. We've seen it happen before." Dr. Aisha Patel's instruments were registering unprecedented activity in Earth's genetic network. The bacterial colonies in the deep ocean, the fungal networks beneath the forests, even the microbiomes within human bodies, all were responding to the presence of the synthesis ships, engaging in some vast, incomprehensible dialogue. The tribute demand was a ruse, Sarah realized. "You were trying to disrupt our genetic network before it could fully awaken." "To protect you," the representative insisted, "and to protect the galaxy." The last time a world achieved this level of genetic integration, it spawned the synthesis. They don't just communicate through genetic exchange. They consume entire biospheres, incorporating them into their collective. But something was different about Earth's awakening. Dr. Yuki Tanaka's readings showed that while the genetic network was reaching out to the synthesis ships, it wasn't being absorbed or overwhelmed. Instead, it was maintaining its integrity, engaging in a complex exchange that seemed to surprise both the Hegemony and the synthesis. "Look at these patterns," Dr. Carlos Rodriguez pointed to the data streams. "Our network isn't just copying their genetic information, it's teaching them something new." The revelation transformed their understanding of Earth's evolutionary history. The complex web of genetic relationships they'd discovered wasn't just a defense mechanism or a communication system. It was a new form of planetary intelligence, one that had developed differently from anything the galaxy had seen before. Where the synthesis sought to absorb and homogenize genetic information, Earth's network had evolved to celebrate and maintain diversity. Each species, each ecosystem contributed its unique voice to the planetary chorus, creating something greater than the sum of its parts without losing its individual identity. This is why you couldn't just take 30% of our genetic diversity, Sarah explained to both the hegemony and the newly arrived synthesis representatives. Earth's network doesn't work through domination or absorption. It works through cooperation and mutual enhancement. The implications were staggering. Earth wasn't just another world approaching genetic transcendence. It represented a third path, one that neither the hegemony's rigid control nor the synthesis's collective absorption had imagined possible. As the three civilizations converged in Earth's orbit, humanity found itself at the center of a galactic revelation. The very qualities that made Earth's biosphere unique, its messy complexity, its endless experimentation, its ability to maintain diversity within unity, might offer a solution to one of the galaxy's most fundamental conflicts. Sarah and her team worked frantically to document and understand what was happening. The genetic network was growing stronger by the hour, but instead of losing control, they were gaining new insights into its nature. Earth wasn't just defending itself. It was offering both the hegemony and the synthesis a glimpse of a different kind of future. The question now wasn't whether Earth would survive, but how its awakening would change the course of galactic evolution. As representatives from three different approaches to life itself gathered to understand what was happening, humanity prepared to step onto a cosmic stage they had never imagined, not as victims or subjects, but as teachers of something revolutionary. In the 3 days since the synthesis arrived, Earth's orbit had become a gathering point for the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. Dr. Sarah Chen stood before representatives of both the hegemony and the synthesis, preparing to demonstrate something that could change everything. "Your civilizations represent two extremes," she began, gesturing to the vast holographic display showing Earth's awakening genetic network. The hegemony seeks to catalog and control life's complexity, while the synthesis aims to unite all life into a single consciousness. But Earth shows us there's another way. The demonstration chamber hummed with energy as they activated the quantum genetic interfaces. Above them, the planetary network pulsed with patterns of communication that were now visible from space, a beautiful dance of bioluminescence and chemical signals that spanned continents and oceans. "We call it collaborative evolution," Dr. Marcus Rivera explained. "Instead of forcing unity or maintaining separation, Earth's network has evolved to create harmony through diversity. Each species, each ecosystem maintains its unique identity while contributing to something greater." The evidence was undeniable. Under their watchful eyes, Earth's biosphere was demonstrating capabilities that challenged both the hegemony's rigid classifications and the synthesis's drive for uniformity. Plant communities were developing new symbiotic relationships in real time. Marine ecosystems were coordinating responses to environmental changes across thousands of miles. Even the human microbiome was showing signs of unprecedented coordination with the planetary network. Dr. Aisha Patel directed their attention to a particularly striking example. "Watch what happens when we introduce genetic information from the synthesis into this isolated test system." The results astonished everyone. Instead of being absorbed or rejected, the alien genetic patterns were being transformed, integrated into Earth's network in ways that preserved their essential nature while enhancing their capabilities. The network wasn't just maintaining diversity. It was actively cultivating it. "Your civilizations have achieved remarkable things," Sarah addressed both groups. The hegemony's mastery of genetic science, the synthesis's achievement of collective consciousness. But in pursuing your paths to their extremes, you've missed something fundamental about life itself. Dr. Yuki Tanaka's team had identified the key principle: resilience through relationship. Earth's genetic network had evolved not by dominating or absorbing its components, but by fostering increasingly complex and beneficial relationships between them. It was a living demonstration of emergence, the principle that the whole becomes greater than the sum of its parts, not by subsuming them, but by enhancing their individual contributions. The synthesis representatives, their organic forms pulsing with interest, were the first to grasp the implications. Your world has achieved what we thought impossible: unity without uniformity, collective intelligence without loss of individuality. The hegemony's crystalline forms shifted in what might have been discomfort or revelation. We sought to prevent worlds from following the synthesis path by disrupting their genetic integration. But you've shown us a third option we never considered. As understanding spread through both delegations, the nature of the discussion changed. No longer was Earth a primitive world to be harvested or protected. It had become a laboratory for a new kind of evolutionary advancement, one that could potentially bridge the philosophical divide that had split galactic civilization. "We're not asking you to abandon your paths," Sarah explained. "We're offering you a chance to expand your understanding. Earth's genetic network isn't just a curiosity. It's a proof of concept for a new way of thinking about life and consciousness." The response was beyond anything they had hoped for. The hegemony began sharing their vast genetic libraries, not to catalog Earth's diversity, but to learn from it. The synthesis offered access to their collective consciousness, not to absorb Earth's biosphere, but to establish a dialogue with it. As the Galactic Summit continued, Earth's importance only grew. The planetary network was proving to be more than just a defensive mechanism or a communication system. It was a blueprint for a new kind of cosmic civilization, one that could embrace both unity and diversity, both individual identity and collective consciousness. Dr. Carlos Rodriguez, watching the proceedings from his deep-sea research station, perhaps summed it up best. "We thought we were fighting for Earth's survival, but we were actually midwifing the birth of a new era. We're not just evolution's children, we're its teachers now." The future that opened before them was both exciting and challenging. Earth would become a gathering point for species and civilizations across the galaxy, all seeking to understand and learn from its unique evolutionary path. Humanity's role would be not just to protect their world's genetic heritage, but to help guide the galaxy toward a more balanced and harmonious future. Sarah looked out at the assembled representatives of Earth's nations and their new galactic allies. The path ahead would not be easy, but they had already achieved something remarkable. They had shown the galaxy that the greatest strength lies not in power or uniformity, but in the endless, beautiful dance of diversity working in harmony.